conference and to the session on pornography. We have a real treat for you this morning. We have Daniel Gilman speaking. Daniel is a pastor at the Church of the Messiah here in Ottawa, a former parliamentary assistant to, among many others, or a few others, also Rana Ambrose. He is a speaker with Strength to Fight, which is an organization committed to fighting pornography in our culture. They're doing phenomenal work, a young organization, but already making huge waves. And I'd also like to say that Daniel Gilman is a personal friend, a mentor, even though he's younger than I am. He's a mentor, and I think he is a great example of a person who can balance very well the Christian virtue of compassion and also passion for the truth and for what is right, good, and just. So please give a very warm welcome to Pastor Daniel Gilman.
There's a mentor in our friendship, and it is him to me 100%. So on my staff. The ancient Greeks had a legend, which although sometimes when we teach it in schools, we speak of it thinking they believed it was true. But as far as I can tell, the ancient Greeks had a legend which they knew was not true, but they believed contained truth that taught them about the realities of the human experience. And one of these legends was the story of Jason and the Argonauts and their voyage past the Sirens. The Sirens, they said, were these mythical spirit women who lived near these rocky islands that no ship could get close to. If they tried, the ship would be destroyed and the human lives would be lost. And yet, though the Greeks knew that if they got close to these islands, if they got close to the Sirens, they would be destroyed, no one could get past that area without being enticed by the song of these sirens. They sang a beautiful song. And so though they knew it would destroy them, they could not help themselves. They succumbed to the temptation, and time and every time again, they would be destroyed. So Jason had a fleet of ships with these legendary heroes called the Argonauts. These were these epic warriors, these heroes who had distinguished themselves in battle, rescuing those who needed rescue and fighting those who destroyed the people. And so these guys are heroes, everything you and I want to be. And Jason, as the leader of this fleet, knew that they had a challenge before them. How would they be able to do what no one had done before and get past the Sirens? How would they escape? And it's such a joy to be with you today. I'm not a Jason. I'm not some epic legendary hero. But I do, in a sense, feel like I get to stand before the Argonauts today. Your people, men and women who've come from across this country to this city because you not only love your country, but you have given yourselves to be a voice for the voiceless. Whether it's regarding preborn babies, 100,000 who are being slaughtered every single year in this country, or issues of human trafficking, which is a reality in our country. Speaking up about sexual abuse, where in our country, 1 out of every 3 girls and 1 out of every 5 boys will be raped by their 18th birthday. These are some of the issues that I know are heavy on your hearts. And I've had the privilege of getting to work on these issues here in our nation's capital. And so, as passionate as we are about all these different issues, and I am passionate about them. I serve on the board of National Campus Life Network, a pro-life organization. I'm a speaker with Strength to Fight. I was just in Hamilton with Nikki and ARPA people on the issue of child sexual abuse just last week, fighting all sorts of different issues. But the issue I stand before you to speak about today is one that I believe in our country is the siren call. And for all these different issues that you and I care about, it is this issue of pornography that I believe is fueling all these other injustices in our country. It's this issue of pornography that has a stranglehold on the men and women of our nation, on the men and women in our churches and in our organizations, that is emasculating men and enslaving women and destroying people from being able to live in the fullness of what they were made for. There are many good people, perhaps many amongst us, who dream of making a difference. But we're living apathetic lives because instead of having the freedom to go and fight the injustices of our day, we're on our phones in front of our computers watching pornography. And so I want to start off by sharing how I became passionate about speaking on this issue. I was working for Member of Parliament Joy Smith. She's been a great champion against human trafficking in our country. I think probably the biggest champion in our country. I was her speechwriter, and so in that capacity it was my job to tell stories of victims in our country who've been trafficked. So I got to become personal friends with many victims of human trafficking in our country. Well, some years later, I was working for Ronna Ambrose, incredible, inspiring woman. I was closing up shop, working another late day at Parliament Hill, as everyone who's worked at Parliament Hill knows, those days are always late. And so I was closing up shop, and CNN was on the TV. There's an interview with a student from Duke University who was also in porn, and she was talking about how pornography is so empowering and liberating and all this kind of stuff. And I was just closing up shop. I got out of the office. I'm walking home, just my heart breaking, because I was hearing her share her story. I knew there was more to it than what she was saying. I didn't know who it was that was behind her, getting her to say what she was saying, but I knew there was some trapper out there getting her to say that stuff. I knew there was more, because I know the stories of people who are in porn. I want to share with you one of those stories. A girl, also in university, like any of us in university, struggling to pay her tuition. A guy came up to her and said, "Hey, you're beautiful. I work for a magazine, do photo shoots and stuff. It's kind of risque, but it pays really well." And so though she was not totally comfortable with it, she needed the money, and she said yes. She lived in California at the time. So a few weeks later, she drove up the west coast of the States to a couple hours to where they're doing the photo shoot. She got there, they gave her a red dress to get into. It was kind of sketchy stuff. Anyway, she got into it. They gave her a drink because she was nervous, to calm her nerves. So she took the drink, and boy, did it calm her nerves. She blacked out. A couple hours later, she woke up in her car, just brutalized, like just a complete mess. There's a wad of money beside her. She was back in her regular clothes. So she drove herself home, climbed into her bed, and passed out again. Hours later, maybe even the next day, she doesn't know, she woke up, she went online and was searching for their online magazine, looking, and she found it. And she watched not a photo shoot, she watched a video. And it wasn't a solo shoot of her getting undressed in the dress like they'd said it would be. Instead, she watched herself be sexually abused. Well, they used that as blackmail against her, saying that if she didn't cooperate with them, they're going to show it to her family. So to keep it as hidden as possible, she went along with what they said. They used that as blackmail, and eventually she was on the streets being prostituted by these people. I can share more of that, just the years of the nightmare of being bought and sold on the streets, and the whole time being filmed through porn and all that stuff. Eventually she was bought by a pimp in Canada, and there an RCMP officer who was trained to recognize victims of human trafficking saw what was going on and rescued her. And today she's actually, she's a wife and a mother, she's Christian, she's doing really well. But to get from where her freedom was found to being a thriving person today, that was the greatest fight of her life. She had to go to AA meetings and all sorts of recovery programs. At one of these AA meetings, she was doing pretty well by this point. A guy was like, "Hey, it's so-and-so," and said her porn name, her old porn name. And he's like, "You do porn?" And she's like, "Well, no, not anymore." And he didn't clue into the normal social cues you and I would. I'd hope you and I would not have a conversation. It's awkward, right? But he's like, "Hey," and start talking. And so she's trying to get over the conversation. And he said, I actually remember, and this one in particular, and he described it, the red dress. He just thought he was watching mainstream porn. And she's just standing there just feeling so dizzy. This guy saw the first time she was raped. And he didn't think anything of it. He was just watching mainstream porn. She was a porn actress, whatever. And as horrifying as it is to you and I to hear that, we can't fault the guy in a sense. He was watching mainstream porn. 88% of mainstream porn contains physical violence. 49% contain verbal aggression. That's mainstream porn. And what so many people think is just consensual stuff happening, it's consensual violence, is not. It's people like this young woman who've been forced into it. They're being bought and sold, they're being abused. Sometimes it's uploaded to the internet under titles of rape and sexual abuse. Other times it's just uploaded as the mainstream stuff, because they can't find people willing to do those things, no matter how much money they offer them. So much of mainstream porn is sexual abuse. And so when I first started doing presentations like this, I would talk about how porn fuels rape, and how porn fuels human trafficking, how it might increase the demand for these types of things. But as we continued to do research into it, we started changing our language. And we no longer give presentations saying porn fuels human trafficking or porn fuels rape, because porn is rape and porn is human trafficking. That's the reality that we're talking about these days. Just to give you an even more depressing picture of what's going on, 15% of boys and 9% of girls today have seen child pornography. 32% of boys and 18% of girls have seen bestiality online. 39% of boys and 23% of girls have seen sexual bondage online. 83% of boys and 57% of girls have seen group sex online. I can continue on with the depressing statistics of what our children are watching these days. Mary Ann Layden, the professor and director of the Sexual Trauma and Psychopathology program in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania, wrote a gripping paper called Pornography and Violence, A New Look at Research. And she writes this: for many reasons, as we shall see, pornography is a very effective teacher of beliefs and behaviors, and one that also teaches its users that behaviors are acceptable and stimulates them to do so. Males who viewed sexual violence obtained higher scores, both on scales measuring acceptance of interpersonal violence and the rape myth, when compared to males who viewed either a physically violent or neutral film. So what she's saying, what they found with academic research, is that you can have someone who watches just violence, and real violence where someone's just beating up someone, and then you can watch, if someone watches sexual violence, it is the one who watches sexual violence that will be way more likely to act out violently against someone, whether sexually or not. But then the research paper, which you can look up yourself, continues that they found that a lot of the same behaviors regarding violence to women are found for those who just watch like regular porn, not even stuff containing violence. There's something about watching, it's more dangerous in terms of someone's behavior, how it will affect them, for someone to watch porn that doesn't even include violence than it is for someone to watch violent material. There's something about the consuming of the person like that for one's own pleasure that is harmful. You can find more research, I'm not going to get into it today, at strengthtofight.ca or fightthenewdrug.org about how porn rewires the brain in the way that I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to pretend to be one, but you can Google Fight the New Drug and porn rewires the brain. You'll find academic research, the science of how watching porn, just regular mainstream porn, is actually rewiring the brain. I was just at a big summit in the States. There's 1,000 of us from 19 different countries, and they have the top scientists and professors doing academic research, looking at how porn actually shrinks the brain. It's actually making your brain smaller. It's really horrifying stuff about how it affects people, not just their behavior, but actually their physical brain. It destroys people. The stats I shared with you just a moment ago had to do with kids that they're seeing, and the average age of exposure to porn is 12 years old. But if we were to look at, I don't have the numbers with me today, but if we were to look at university and above, the numbers jump from 30% to higher than 90% of guys using porn today. And for women, although it seems like people continue to forget this, more than 30% of women today above the age of 18 are using pornography. It's not just a guy's issue, it's an issue that both men and women are dealing with today. So that's just a brief overview of how dark this is. But the reality is there is something we can do. What can we do? Well, back in the day when I was a speechwriter, one of my bosses, who was really active fighting the darkness, had me put in every single speech I ever wrote for her. Education is her greatest weapon. Every speech had to culminate. Education is our greatest weapon. And what killed me about that is that I don't believe that, not for a moment. And not only do I not believe it, I actually think it's possible that the opposite is true. And that is because of the bystander effect. Social scientists have found that the more people at the scene of the crime, the less likely anyone will do anything about it. Just the other day, one of my roommates was walking home and on Rideau Street, if you're familiar with Ottawa at all, this happens a lot, but on Rideau Street he saw a guy beating up another guy. I was like, hey, did you intervene? This was your chance to be a hero, man. And he's like, we all watched it happen. He's like, I don't know what happened. We all just stood there and just watched it happen. I was horrified. It's the bystander effect. I wasn't surprised. This guy, my roommate, is an amazing man, but the bystander effect in effect. Some years ago, I was at a potluck at the University of Ottawa, and there was not enough chairs, and someone was like, hey, there aren't enough chairs. We're like, oh snap, there's not enough chairs. And none of us were getting chairs, even though there were chairs right over there. There's the bystander effect in effect. And then one person said, hey, and went and grabbed a chair. Then all of us grabbed chairs. We had more chairs than we needed, because there's actually great power in the bystander effect. And that I do have hope that just as more people passively watching a crime scene, the less likely anyone will do anything about it, so also the more people who do something about it, the more likely others will do. So I was at a crime scene also on Rio Street a few years ago, same scene, someone's beating someone up. I took out my phone and started calling the police. I kind of regret it, just jump in and stop them, but I was younger then. So I took out my phone and was calling the police, and others, I saw it, I took out my phone, others took out their phone, and not to videotape it, but as I took action, others took action. And so I do not believe that education is the greatest weapon, because it simply adds more people to the scene of the crime. In the change the world, like fighting poverty and human trafficking and all that stuff, when people say education, they tend to mean raising awareness, which just means telling people about the problem. So the entirety of my presentation would be to tell you the horrific stats and the horrifying signs about porn, thinking somehow that would motivate you to go do the same and that would change the world. It doesn't work. What we need to do is to take action. And so with the remainder of my time with you, I want to look at different pieces of action we can take. And so the first, as we're here in Ottawa, our nation's capital, there's stuff we can do in politics. Just after this last election, got a call from a member of parliament, you'll meet him tomorrow, Arnold Viersen, and he said, hey Daniel, I want to do something to fight porn. And so a bunch of us, including ARPA, got together and we were able to strategize with him what to do. And the results of that is before you on one of the pages you have, motion M47. I'll read it to you, but follow along. M47, that the Standing Committee on Health be instructed to examine the public health effects of the ease of access and viewing of online, violent and degrading sexually explicit material on children, women, and men, recognizing and respecting the provincial and territorial jurisdictions in this regard, and that the said committee report its findings to the host no later than July 2017. And you might be thinking, that's a lot of big words, what's even the point? There's a lot of various political stuff we can do, laws we can see change in Canada that would be great, that would help safeguard children against porn in this nation and be able to help turn the tide against it. But first, we're going to need some concrete evidence. And so if we were to have, if this goes through and we have a committee that studies the effects that porn has on people, or in the words of the motion, sexually violent material, that is going to be an incredible help to those MPs who are going to try to bring in legislation on various aspects on these types of things. And so this is a really important first step. It's so important we can get this done. Now there's various ways that you and I can take to be able to support this. So the other handout you have is a petition, and that petition is something that has been already approved by the Clerk of Petitions in the House of Commons. And so if you have that filled out, you need, I think the one in front of you has like room for 10 signatures. If you have 25 signatures, then whatever MP you give it to will present it on the floor of the House of Commons. The beautiful thing about petitions is that when you present them on the floor of the House of Commons, the government, they have to respond to it in a certain amount of days. It forces them to actually go public on the issue. And so I want to encourage you, I gave you each one, but you can go home and photocopy it, or you can go online and get more by going to Arnold Viersen's Facebook page. And you can go there, download it, print it off, and bring it to your church, bring it to whoever, and just get it filled out and send it in. When you send mail to MPs, it's free, which for someone in my financial position, that's really, really helpful. So if you're like me, that's awesome. So you can mail it and you just need to put the MP's name on it, it will ship it off to them. And so that is an action item you can take. It's not just telling people about the problem, it's mobilizing people to actually do something, a small something. So the petition in front of you is the first action item. The second thing you can do is write to your MP. I recommend it, it's free, write the mail. Don't just send some print off, like write a handwritten thing to your MPs. When I first came to Parliament Hill, my job was to be the guy that would draft a response for the MP. So I read as if I'm the MP signs your name, sends it back. If you listen to what I just said, it's actually kind of frustrating, because when you get that beautiful response from an MP, you're like, oh, they read my letter. Really, someone young like me read the letter and wrote the response, and the MP just signed their name. So although letter writing is important, it doesn't make a huge difference. One of the members of Parliament I was working for had taken a stand on an issue, and then when the time came to vote, and their stand was consistent with the party line, and then when the day of the vote came, it was an issue I really cared about. I liked the party line, and they voted against what the party wanted them to do, what I wanted them to do. I was really frustrated. The MP came back, and I was even younger than I am now, which is still pretty young, and so my MP was not so young. I felt kind of intimidated. They're an MP after all. I was like, hey, can I ask what happened? And they said, well, some people met with me, some constituents met with me and shared how this issue affected them. And when I went to stand up to vote, nay. I saw their faces and I had to vote yay. And I was like, okay, thank you. I now understand how to change the world. And that's why you're here in Ottawa, to meet with MPs. And over the years I've seen that letter writing, I don't think makes a huge difference, or it's worth taking a minute to do. It'll only take you a minute to write a letter, but meeting with MPs can be the difference. And so I am overwhelmed with joy to see you guys here in Ottawa and to hear you're going to meet with MPs. And so I want to encourage you, today when you meet with MPs, tell them that they need to support Motion 47. You're their boss. They work for you. You can tell them what's up. You tell them to vote for M47. I'm sure you'll have people from ARPA talking about how to meet with MPs, but just one free piece of advice. One of the things that keeps a lot of us ordinary Canadians from meeting with MPs is we feel like we might not have the words to say. We're not articulate enough. We're not as researched on the issue. We might sound like we don't know what we're talking about. But MPs understand that they're the professional. In fact, they want to make sure they continue to be the professional and that we're just the constituents, right? They want to keep their job. And so because they want to keep their job and they know they're the professional, they're not looking at us to be well-researched, articulate, eloquent people. They just want to know what issues we care about enough for them to be able to get our vote. So you do not need to come and even quote any of the stats that I did. All you need to do is be like, M47, yes, that's all. They'll get the point. You don't even need to say anything, just M47, okay? Anything you add on to that, that's even more power. But you really do not let the fact that we're not as articulate as these trained orators keep us back from speaking up on the issues that matter. I really believe that meeting with them today can make a difference. One talking point that I would share with you to share with them, if you can remember this, you don't need to, but one thing I think that would help is for you to remind them that sexual violence, online sexual violence, what Motion 47 is talking about, online sexual violence is not depictions of violence. It is violence. In most cases, violence against women. Okay? They're not actresses, they're not actors, they're victims. Okay? I'll repeat that. Online sexual violence is not depictions of violence. It is violence. In most cases, violence against women. You and I might be very frustrated with the way Parliament is these days, but there are not a lot of MPs who want to be found supporting violence against women. That's the reality, and I'm very grateful for that. Online violence, online depictions of sexual violence is not depictions of sexual violence. It is violence, in most cases, violence against women. That is something I would encourage you to share with your MP and challenge them to stand against violence against women, stand against sexual violence against women. If they bring up issues of censorship and freedom of speech and all this stuff, we believe in those things. I think most ARPA people believe in freedom of speech, but freedom of speech ends where violence against someone begins. Are you with me? I hope we're agreed on that. Okay? So meet with your MPs. Even better than that, be like Arnold Pearson and run for office the next chance you get, and then you can actually introduce awesome motions and legislation like this. And so you'll see on the sheet you have before you with motion on it that there's more stats and stuff. So this is again, you don't need to be well researched on it, but this is a great piece of advice stuff for you. But we're going to continue on. So politics. So meeting with MPs, the petitions you have in front of you, writing letters, all that stuff makes a difference. Proverbs 29 says, "Many men seek the face of the ruler, but from the Lord comes justice." I'm convinced that if we want to make a difference in politics, we not only meet with MPs, we not only run for office, we not only donate to ARPA, which makes a difference as well, but we seek God in prayer. And so if you want to make a difference, and I know you do, then commit yourself to prayer on these issues. Another thing that makes a difference in our country is to speak to our children about these issues. One of the things that breaks my heart is to do presentations in churches or universities, all this stuff, talking with parents, and to learn that time and time again, good parents who want to protect their kids refuse to speak about this to their kids. The average age of exposure to porn is 12 years old. I was at a conference last week, a big homeschool conference in Hamilton. I did a presentation on purity for the kid, for the youth, not for kids. And these parents came to me and like, "No, I can't believe you talked to my kids about porn." I'm like, "How old are your kids?" Like 16, 17. It's like, you've never talked about this stuff with them? Like, that's not okay. If you want to safeguard your children from seeing this stuff that's so highly addictive, you need to be talking with your children. So one incredible resource that I don't get any money from it's not mine, is called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. You can buy it on Amazon.ca, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's an incredible book you could honestly read to a 4-year-old. It won't sexualize it in any way, but by the time you finish the picture book, it has managed to help safeguard them against these issues. It's a brilliantly put together picture book that is good for any age. So go to Amazon.ca, buy the book if you love your kids. There's more we can talk about, ways that we can do battle on this issue in our country. And hopefully we'll have time for Q&A, we can talk more about that. But the most important thing, if we're going to be fighting porn in this nation, is to make sure that we ourselves and those around us are free of porn. And so with the remainder of the time I have to speak, I want to talk about 7 strategies to freedom. But first I want to read to you this make-believe story that, although it sounds like it's written for kids, really it's written for all of us. So it'll take a few minutes to read, but put on your imagination caps. This is a powerful story. There was once a great and noble king, whose land was terrorized by a crafty dragon. Like a massive bird of prey, the scaly beast delighted in ravaging villages with his fiery breath. Hapless victims ran from their burning homes, only to be snatched into the dragon's jaws or talons. Those devoured instantly were deemed more fortunate than those carried back to the dragon's lair, to be devoured at his leisure. The king led his sons and knights in many valiant battles against the dragon. Riding alone in the forest, one of the king's sons heard his name purred low and soft. In the shadows of the ferns and trees, curled among the boulders, lay the dragon. The creature's heavy-lidded eyes fastened on the prince, and the reptilian mouth stretched into a friendly smile. "Don't be alarmed," said the dragon, as gray wisps of smoke rose lazily from his nostrils. "I'm not what your father thinks." "What are you then?" asked the prince, wearily drawing his sword as he pulled in the reins to keep his fearful horse from bolting. "I am pleasure," said the dragon. "Ride on my back and you will experience more than you ever imagined. Come now, I have no harmful intention. I seek a friend, someone to share flights with me. Have you never dreamed of flying, never longed to soar in the clouds?" Visions of soaring high above the forested hills drew the prince hesitantly from his horse. The dragon unfurled one great webbed wing to serve as a ramp to his rigid back. Between the spiny projections, the prince found a secure seat. Then the creature snapped his powerful wings twice and launched them into the sky. The prince's apprehension melted into awe and exhilaration. From then on, he met the dragon often, but secretly, for how could he tell his father, brothers, or the knights that he had befriended the enemy? The prince felt separate from them all. Their concerns were no longer his concerns. Even when he wasn't with the dragon, he spent less time with those he loved and more time alone. The skin on the prince's legs became calloused from gripping the rigid back of the dragon, and his hands grew rough and hardened. He began wearing gloves to hide the malady. After many nights of riding, he discovered scales growing on the back of his hands as well. With dread, he realized his fate were he to continue, and so he resolved to return no more to the dragon. But after a fortnight, he again sought out the dragon, having been tormented with desire. And so it transpired many times over. No matter what his determination, the prince eventually found himself pulled back as if by the cords of an invisible web. Silently, patiently, the dragon always waited. One cold, moonless night, their excursion became a foray against a sleeping village. Torching the thatched roofs with fiery blasts from his nostrils, the dragon roared with delight when the terrified victims fled from their burning home. Swooping in, the serpent belched again, and flames engulfed a cluster of screaming villages. The prince closed his eyes tightly in an attempt to shut out the carnage. In the pre-dawn hours, when the prince crept back from his dragon tryst, the road outside his father's castle usually remained empty, but not tonight. Tonight, terrified refugees streamed to the protective walls of the castle. The prince attempted to slip through the crowd to close himself in his chambers, but some of the survivors stared and pointed toward him. He was there, one woman cried out. "I saw him on the back of the dragon." Others nodded their heads in angry agreement. Horrified, the prince saw that his father, the king, was in the courtyard, holding a bleeding child in his arms. The king's face mirrored the agony of his people, as his eyes found the prince's. The son fled, hoping to escape into the night, but the guards apprehended him as if he were a common thief. They brought him to the great hall where his father sat solemnly on the throne. The people on every side railed against the prince. "Banish him," he heard one of his own brothers angrily cry out. "Burn him alive," other voices shouted. As the king rose from his throne, blood stains from the wounded shone darkly on his royal robe. The crowd fell silent in expectation of his decree. The prince, who could not bear to look into his father's eyes, stared at the flagstones of the floor. "Take off your gloves and your tunic," the king commanded. The prince obeyed slowly, dreading to have his metamorphosis uncovered before the kingdom. Was his shame not already enough? He had hoped for a quick death without further humiliation. Sounds of revulsion rippled through the crowd at the sight of the prince's thick, scaled skin and the ridge growing along his spine. The king strode toward his son, and the prince steeled himself, fully expecting a backhanded blow, even though he had never been struck so by his father. Instead, his father embraced him and wept as he held him tightly. In shocked disbelief, the prince buried his face against his father's shoulder. "Do you wish to be freed from the dragon, my son?" The prince answered in despair, "I wished it many times, but there is no hope for me." "Not alone," said the king. "You cannot win against the dragon alone." "Father, I am no longer your son. I'm half beast," sobbed the prince. But his father replied, "My blood runs in your veins. My nobility has always been stamped deep within your soul." With his face still hidden tearfully in his father's embrace, the prince heard the king instruct the crowd. "The dragon is crafty. Some fall victim to his wiles and some to his violence. There will be mercy for all who wish to be free. Who else among you has ridden the dragon?" The prince lifted his head to see someone emerge from the crowd. To his amazement, he recognized an older brother, one who had been lauded throughout the kingdom for his onslaught against the dragon in battle, and for his many good deeds. Others came, some weeping, others hanging their head in shame. The king embraced them all. "This is our most powerful weapon against the dragon," he announced. "Truth. No more hidden flights. Alone we cannot resist him." What I love about this story is it so powerfully conveys the truth that so many of us in our communities, in our Christian communities, think that we alone are the ones who struggle with the siren call. That we alone are the one who promises ourselves we'll never do that thing again, and we find ourselves doing it. I love that this story so powerfully conveys what it's like to be struggling with hidden shame, hidden sin, hidden darkness. And I know that what the siren call is for different ones of us will differ. Not all of us struggle with porn. Some of us have never seen it. But every one of us have things that we want to keep hidden. And yet I promise you that it is in the darkness where those things will most destroy. I promise you that in light, in truth, in bringing it into the open, there is safety, there is healing, there is hope. And so whatever our issue is, whether it's porn or any other issue, we need to be willing to bring it into the light, to not keep it hidden. And so the first of the 7 steps to freedom, whether it's about porn or any other issue that we're dealing with, we all have issues to deal with. The first is confession. We need to bring it into the light. And so I encourage all of us, whether, again, it's for ourselves or someone trying to help, find someone that is a mature person, find someone of the same gender, find someone who's accessible, that you can text anytime, day or night, and be committed to sharing your issues with them again and again and again every time. Bring it into the light. Sin, darkness, addiction is like mildew that festers and grows in the darkness. But as soon as you bring it to the light, it loses its power. It's so exciting. I have the privilege as a pastor to meet up with guys every single week. And as I see them beginning to practice the spiritual discipline of confession, all of a sudden you see this kind of strength come back into their life. That's the beginning of their fight once you're willing to confess. And so I have a confessor. Every single one of us needs to, whatever our issues are. Second, we need amputation. In Matthew 5, Jesus says, if something causes you to sin, cut it off. We need to apply this. Every single one of us has to be sure to cut off those accesses to sin in our lives. And for every single one of us, whether you struggle with porn or not, no matter who you are, every one of us needs to have proper filters on our computer to be able to block this stuff from getting to us. The porn industry is more than a $12 billion industry. That's a lot of money for strategy, for marketing. They have a lot of clients. If you're not their client, I'm not their client. They're looking to expand their clientele. They're looking to find new addicts. So even if you would never type in some kind of pornographic search, they're trying to get to your screen so that you become addicted. So if you don't want them to get more clientele, if you don't want them to get you, I don't care, you never have ever thought of typing, you don't even know what you would type to find bad stuff. We need to have filters. It is a reckless and foolish thing for any of us to have a computer or even a smartphone not have filters on it. So for more stuff about that, you can go to strengthoffight.ca. We don't sell the stuff. We'll just help you find what's the best filters. I recommend Covenant Eyes. More details about that you can find online. So the first is confession. The second is amputation. I know guys who quit their jobs. I've known girls who quit their jobs because their job gave them access to unfiltered computer usage, and they knew they needed to cut that off. So amputation is key. And third is accountability. Confession is something we initiate, or we go and tell someone what we're struggling with. Accountability is someone who loves you enough to ask you the tough questions. And I believe every Christian needs this. We all need friends who ask us those tough questions, so make sure you have that. The next is that we need to learn to love. One of the reasons I think for why watching porn is able to affects people the same way as watching violent porn, like it dements the way people interact with each other and makes it more likely someone will commit violence, is because porn is the opposite of love. And every human being was made to love. The essence of friendships and family, all this stuff is love. But whereas love is, in the words of Olaf from Frozen, putting the needs of someone else above yourself, porn is by its very nature a selfish act. It's about you watching someone else for your own pleasure. It breaks your abilities. It perverts, twists your understanding of what sex and love and all these things are. Furthermore, one of the greatest reasons people go relapse into porn is boredom, as far as the research that I've found. And so I encourage every one of us to be relearning how to love, what it means to love, by going and volunteering at your favorite charity, by working with ARPA, whatever, working at Christian Pregnancy Center, doing stuff that is teaching, rewiring your brain to be caring for the needs of others, to be teaching yourself what love is. Next, we need to be people who are renewing our mind. Just as porn is rewiring the brain, we need to be people who are studying the scriptures and being transformed by the renewing of our mind. And that is from Romans 12, 1-2. Next, we need to deal with our heart issues. I find when I sit down with guys, they'll say, like, I'll say to them, hey, you've come to me for behavior modification. You want me to help you change your behavior. You're looking at porn, you want to stop looking at porn. But there's actually deeper heart issues that are driving that. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's unforgiveness, bitterness that's crept into the heart over years. Again, sometimes it's profound boredom, but other times it's wounds, emotional wounds they've had from people, abuse. There's things that are deeper than just the behavior. We need to have our hearts transformed if we're going to be able to be people living in freedom and purity and not contributing to the problem. And finally, back to Jason the Argonauts. The ultimate solution, one that encompasses all the others, but I believe is most central to all of it, to really find freedom. And I have seen the most unlikely people walk in freedom. I've had the privilege of walking with a guy to freedom. He had been sexually abusing minors. Part of his journey was like me helping him go to the police and like turning himself in and all that kind of stuff. Like it was a pretty heavy duty situation. Years later now though, he's walking in freedom. He really is. I've been able to walk as a pastor with a guy who his porn addiction led to multiple affairs. And when he came to me, he's like, I so badly, like I love my wife, I don't ever want to cheat on her, and yet I found myself continuing, like he was a serial affair person. And today, like his marriage is strong. I've seen lives transformed. So whoever we are, whether it's ourselves or people we love, like every single one of us can walk to freedom. But the biggest thing is a lesson we can learn from Jason. Jason and the Argonauts got past the sirens. And the way he was able to do that is he brought with him Orpheus, the world's greatest harpist. And when they got close to the sirens and they realized the sirens were going to begin their call, Jason said, Orpheus, it's time. And Orpheus began playing an even greater song, an even more beautiful song that filled the hearts and the minds and the imaginations, the souls of his people. And so because they heard a greater song than the song of the sirens, they were able to get past. And I'm convinced, having not just spoken on the issue, but getting to sit down with men and working with the ladies on our team, sit down week by week with the women, to see that what helps women and men ultimately find freedom, the fullness of life for everyone, whether your issue is porn or whatever it is to have your heart, to have your mind, to have all that you are captivated by an even greater song. And the greatest song of all that we will ever find is the song that you and I know so well. The song that, unlike the Greek legends that have a nugget of truth in them, is actual truth, real history. That at the beginning of time, God created the heavens and the earth in perfect harmony. The world was awesome. And when he did it, he created it with laws that govern the world, like the law of gravity. If the earth was to disobey the law of gravity, even for a moment, it would send our world into chaos. We would all be evaporated or freeze or something horrible. And just like God made these physical laws to govern the physical universe, so he made laws to govern human interaction. That just like those laws, that if we broke them, it would send the world into chaos. But unlike the inanimate objects that don't have the freedom to obey or disobey, God gave freedom, human beings as freedom. And every single time humans turn in their own depravity to break those laws. And in our breaking of those laws, it introduced homelessness and heartbreak, human trafficking, sexual abuse, pornography, sexual violence, all these things. And we are powerless on our own to defeat these things. But God, not content to stay in his heavenly throne, left his throne in heaven, came to earth as a man, and entered into the fullness of the muck and pain and frailty and death of the human condition. Because he so loved the world. But death did not have the final word. God, Jesus, the Son of God, came back to life, defeating death, and by that same power, not simply makes bad people better, but makes dead men and women alive for the glory of God. And that is the greatest song. But the thing about this song, for us to have that song enter into our hearts, it has to be something we don't just know about. We need to not just know about this God and know about this good news. We need to actually know God. And I think the most haunting thing I have ever seen in my life is not simply the reality of the injustices of sexual abuse and pornography and human trafficking that I've had the privilege of fighting, but it's actually getting to be among men and women who know so much about this God, who know so much about this greatest song that the human being can ever experience, but they don't know it themselves. I think that's actually the most haunting thing, to see people who know so much about this God, but don't know him. And so, for the purposes of fighting against the darkness, I think the greatest thing that I can share with you isn't how to speak with MPs, but to plead with you that if you are someone who knows so much about this God, and so much about the gospel, and so much about this greatest song, but it's not something that you know personally, to plead with you, to cry out to him, and say, God, I'm not satisfied to live a life. I've seen people around me know you. I need to know you. And you might even be someone that's ensnared to porn and strong with all this stuff, but you know God. And you're knowing God, there is hope for freedom. On the other end of the spectrum, you might be someone that your life is so moral and good, but if you don't know God, then there's an emptiness and a decay inside of you. And the only thing that can medicate it is the gospel. And I believe that as we embrace that, as we let that song transform our lives, we'll find the same thing that Jason and the Argonauts found. That we can not only get past the sirens, that we can be part of destroying the sirens throughout this nation for the safety of our children. And then through that, we're going to see issues like human trafficking, sexual abuse, and all these stats that seem so dark, the stats I read to you earlier, actually change. Thank you.
Wow. I saw the preacher come out there too. That was fantastic, Daniel. Thank you so much for that message.